Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Gottbeard's Bolt Escape Guide, Bolton with Beard. Alright, let's get started, shall we? I'd like to talk a little bit about the first episode. I was really happy with it. I'd love to be a part of opening the dialogue on charge binds, and we actually got a response from Roble about this charge bind. It's currently 100% movement speed debuff for half a second, and it avoids all abilities that reduce. We knew all this. They're planning on changing it to a 60% snare, but increasing the duration to 0.75 seconds. My thoughts on this, I think it's wonderful to get such a quick response. However, I think the change won't do anything. In fact, it might actually make it worse. Moving at 60% movement speed is almost like standing still. As it currently stands, it takes about 2 ambush spammers or 3 other gap closers to permanently lock a character down. With the 0.75 duration and the 60% snare, you could conceivably lock someone down with a single person spamming charges for this change. So the functionality of the change is to make it not prohibit movement or be this permanent lockdown. This change doesn't actually accomplish that. Makes it worse. Another problem that I see with the change is that the 60% snare, see right now, if you're being charge bound, you know it. You can feel it. It feels very specific. But when it's changed to a 60% snare, a lot of charges already do a 60% snare. So there's no way to differentiate between this debuff that's going to be on you that you cannot purge, and other debuffs that feel exactly the same that can be purged, which really muddies up counterplay. So for instance, I won't know whether or not I should use Shuffle to purge this snare because it came from Lotus Fan or Stampede, or whether it's just a snare from any old charge that I can't purge. And if I guess wrong, and it's a guess because there won't be any way to conceivably tell the difference between these two, then I've wasted both my time and my resources trying to counter something that is by its nature uncounterable. Now, my own suggestions on the issue, either make this new charge snare purgeable, implement some kind of immunity system, make it purgeable, do something where counterplay actually works, or just take the snare off of it altogether and make a charge either go a set distance, and you invest this much stem or magicka to go this far, bottom line. If they're not there when you get there, tough, use another gap closer, or you make it to where the gap closers follow the target, wherever they may end up. One of those two changes, but just get rid of the snare altogether. It's muddying up your combat, and it's too abusable. It leverages outnumbered combat. When you're fighting and you have the numbers advantage, if you have the ability to pin your opponent down and there's no counterplay, nothing he can do about it, you're going to win that fight regardless of skill differentials or gear differentials or anything, really. The numbers are all that matters. So that's my take on that, and I really do appreciate such a fast response from ZeniMax. Hey guys, and welcome to the skill tricks section of this guide. We're in Fort Ash. There's some really good rock formations here, and they should allow me to show you what I'm talking about. We'll start out with the easiest trick to master. I call it Bolt Humping, and it's a very useful, probably the most useful trick. So you see here I've got this rock in front of me, and it looks like I wouldn't be able to bolt this rock, but thanks ZeniMax, what the hell's going on? Anyway, there you go. With one bolt, I'm at the top of this rock. You may ask me, well, how does that work? It's kind of hard to describe, but essentially Bolt does some vertical checks. So essentially the first thing that's stopping me from bolting is this little flat ledge here, and we want to get to where this flat ledge is about thigh high, and then it will no longer stop me. So now we know that the bolt will climb one section, and the next thing is this thing here. So again, we want it about thigh high, and we know that it will climb yet again. So essentially bolt is rounding up at a certain distance about thigh high, and since we know that after these two roundups I'll have no problems bolting, I can bolt directly to the top, and that's kind of how bolt humping works. And you can go completely over terrain like this rock here. Bam, I've humped completely over that terrain. It is an exceptionally useful tool because it allows you to put terrain in between you and other players, and that helps you peel versus these gap closers that we've been talking about. And then it's also useful because the straightest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and if you're constantly humping terrain skillfully, then you are putting great distance on chasing opponents who have to either do really hard jump checks or move to left or right. Okay, moving on to the next trick. The L bolt or the C bolt is essentially a little bit harder to perform. So what it's based off of is the fact that you have about 2 or 3 pixels worth of movement input when you push bolt before the effect actually takes hold. Now this can be used for redirecting which way you want to bolt, but since that movement is shut off vertically, meaning you won't fall, you can also use it to hook ledges. So here I'm bolting as an example off the ledge, yet by pushing left at the very end of the bolt I'm able to hook the ledge, and that's one of the more tricky uses of bolt humping. But another way is if I'm strafing here, I'll push the bolt escape right around here, and then I'll continue to move, and that will make it to where by the time I bolt, I actually bolt around here, I bolt hump this box, I end here, but instead of just ending the bolt, I'm actually going to use that movement input to strafe behind the terrain, leaving me here. So let's do that right now. Alright, so Max, quit that. So there you go. Now you can obviously see how that would be useful when being chased, especially with a good well-placed dodge roll. That would juke the ever-loving crap out of some people, and it protects you from those gap closers. So that is the L bolt or the C bolt, and it can absolutely be used with terrain humping to make you very elusive. I recommend practicing the hell out of that one though, because it is a little bit more difficult. Okay, the last trick of this guide is going to be the Boomerang Bolt, and to do this, essentially we're going to go to Controls and see Roll Dodge. We're going to change it from its default and make it a single mouse button. Then we're going to go to Settings and Gameplay, and we're going to disable double tap to dodge. So now you can see that no matter how I tap, I'm not going to dodge anymore. And when I push my one button, I dodge, but I default dodge backwards. If I give a direction input, I go that direction when I press the dodge. But if I don't give any directional input, it gives me a default backwards dodge. Now we're going to take the pre-existing dodge roll animation canceling that a lot of players do every day in Cyrodiil. So here's an example of that. And we're going to apply it to bolt escape, and it looks like this. Little Boomerang Bolt. So you might say, well, what can we do with that functionally? Well, if you notice here, if I put my foot on the corner of this pixel here, and I bolt, I fall straight down all the way. However, let's go back up and see what happens when we add an animation cancelled dodge roll to the mix. I was out of stamina. Okay, let's do that one more again. Bad test, bad test. Look at that. Look at that. Caught the lip. No straight fall. So this gives you superior vertical control. You can decide whether or not you want to drop down all the way to the bottom lip, or if you want to hang that lip. And the further back you bolt from, the quicker it's going to be. And that's an example of one way to use the Boomerang Bolt. Another way is if you're using Ball of Lightning like me, the ball will give a directional input about where you went. If you juke somebody hard enough and you have some time, you can actually bolt dodge roll to give yourself a lead on moving out of sight, and when they come around the corner, if you did it quick enough, the ball will tell them you went that way when actually you went up here, and then you end up with a mad juke and you can head back the other way and they just have no clue where you went. And that concludes our advanced bolt escape techniques. It's worth noting that these techniques work just fine in Cyrodiil sewers, but some of the terrain in the sewers is grabby and will snag you up. You kind of have to learn what terrain doesn't like to be bolted around, what terrain doesn't let you bolt through it, what terrain doesn't like to be bolted onto. Sometimes you'll boomerang bolt and end up on a shed and then you're just floating in air and you're a sitting duck. It's a bit of a learning curve, but after you acclimate to the sewers and all the snaggy terrain, these tricks are very powerful in the sewers. It's also something that, over time you can master, and it will grow in power the better you become at lacing these tricks together. They're really only limited by your imagination, and they give you a lot of options when you're bolting away from a group. Make sure and tune in for episode 3, where we wrap up the Bolt Escape Guide by taking everything we've learned and going one step further to analyze common chase tactics used in Cyrodiil, as well as counter skills that you can load to help you deal with these tactics, and a thorough investigation of what peel skills we have. Skills that can let us, stall the Zerg that's chasing us or help us get away. And lastly, we'll just talk about orienting ourselves to sort of the goal of bolt escape and how to maintain that lead, and just general tricks on this issue. Gottbeard signing out.